Parrot calls emergency. What he said saved his owner's life. Please listen until the end to be amazed by this story. Percy's feathers ruffled as he shifted on his perch, his keen eyes tracking Olivia's movements across the sunlit living room. Something was wrong. The African grey parrot had always been perceptive. His previous owner, an elderly language professor, had spent years teaching him not just to mimic words but to understand context and meaning. Today, those lessons would serve a vital purpose. The morning light filtered through the bay windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Olivia moved slowly, her usual grace replaced by a strange, unsteady gait. Her face looked different too. One side seemed to droop slightly, and her words, when she spoke to herself, came out slurred and confused. "Percy, good morning," she managed, her voice sounding strange even to her own ears. She reached for her coffee mug, but her fingers wouldn't cooperate, sending it crashing to the floor. Percy's heart raced as he watched his beloved owner falter. This wasn't normal, this wasn't right. The intelligent bird had been with Olivia for years, long before her recent divorce. He knew her routines, her expressions, her very essence. And right now, everything about her screamed danger. Olivia sank to the couch, confusion clouding her usually bright eyes. She tried to reach for her phone but couldn't seem to coordinate her movements. "Just tired," she mumbled to herself, closing her eyes. Percy knew better. The parrot remembered the health documentaries Olivia watched in the evenings, especially the one about warning signs that had aired just last week. He had absorbed the information, as he did with everything in his environment. With determination, Percy flew from his perch to the coffee table where the landline phone sat. Olivia rarely used it anymore, preferring her mobile, but she kept it for emergencies. Percy had watched her use it countless times over the years, had heard the numbers spoken aloud during various calls. Most importantly, he'd heard the 3 numbers mentioned repeatedly on those documentaries. 911. With deliberate precision, Percy used his beak to press each number. The dispatcher's voice came through the speaker. 911, what's your emergency? Percy drew upon his extensive vocabulary, carefully choosing his words. Help, owner sick, help Olivia. There was a pause on the line. Is this a prank call? The dispatcher asked, her voice stern. No prank, emergency, stroke, help Olivia. Percy squawked, recalling the exact term from the documentary. He continued to repeat the address. Another piece of information he heard countless times when Olivia ordered deliveries. In the dispatch center, Rachel Wilson's finger hovered over the disconnect button. In her years as an emergency dispatcher, she received her share of prank calls, but something about this one gave her pause. The voice was clearly not human. It sounded like a bird, but the urgency was unmistakable. The address being squawked matched their caller ID system, and stroke symptoms weren't something a prankster would typically include. I'm sending help right away, Rachel decided, entering the information into the system. Stay on the line if you can. Miles away, paramedic Walter Evans and his partner Eliza Thompson received the unusual call details as they sped toward the address. Did I read that right? Walter asked, glancing at the computer screen. Possible stroke reported by a parrot? It wouldn't be the strangest call we've ever had, Eliza replied, navigating the morning traffic with practiced ease. Remember the cat that dialed 911 by sitting on the phone last year? Yeah, but that was random. This says the bird actually reported symptoms. Walter shook his head in disbelief. Back at the house, Percy maintained his position near the phone, occasionally calling out, "Stroke, help," into the receiver, while keeping his eyes fixed on Olivia. She had slumped further on the couch, her breathing shallow, her eyes unfocused. When the doorbell rang, Percy flew to the window, crying out loudly to guide the paramedics. Through the glass, he could see 2 uniformed figures on the porch. He flew back to Olivia, pulling at her sleeve with his beak, trying to rouse her enough to open the door, but she was barely responsive. Outside, Walter and Eliza exchanged glances as they heard the distinct sound of a parrot calling from within. After knocking and receiving no human response, they made the decision to check for unlocked entries. Finding the back door ajar, they entered cautiously. "Hello? Paramedics?" Walter called out. Percy's loud squawk guided them to the living room, where they found Olivia on the couch, displaying classic signs of a stroke. The parrot fluttered between them, clearly agitated but seemingly relieved at their presence. "BP's dropping," Eliza reported after attaching the monitor. "Definite facial drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulties, classic presentation." "Time is brain," Walter nodded, their practiced protocol kicking in. "Let S move." As they efficiently transferred Olivia to the stretcher, Percy remained close, his concern evident in every movement. When Eliza opened the front door to leave, Percy flew out and settled determinedly on the edge of the stretcher. "Whoa there, buddy," Walter said, instinctively raising his hand to shoo the bird away. "Wait," Eliza intervened. "This bird literally called 911 and diagnosed a stroke. I think he's earned the right to stay with his owner." Walter couldn't argue with that logic. "Fine, but you re-explaining this to the hospital staff." As they loaded Olivia into the ambulance, Percy perched carefully on the metal rail of the stretcher, his eyes never leaving her face. In the dash to the hospital, while Eliza monitored Olivia's vitals and administered preliminary treatment, Walter found himself oddly moved by the Parrot's devotion. "How did you know?" he asked, not really expecting an answer. "How did you know to call for help?" Percy tilted his head, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand the question. "Olivia, friend. Percy, help. Love, Olivia." Walter blinked in surprise. It wasn't just mimicry. There was intent behind those words, a connection that transcended the usual boundaries between humans and animals. This bird wasn't just repeating phrases. He had recognized a medical emergency and taken action. At Cedar Heights Medical Center, Dr. Hannah Malik was waiting when the ambulance arrived, having been briefed on the situation. As the team rushed Olivia through the emergency department doors, Dr. Malik's practiced eyes quickly assessed the symptoms, confirming the paramedic's diagnosis. "Get her to CT immediately," she ordered, "and make sure the stroke team is ready. Within the window for intervention if we move now." As the medical team prepared to take Olivia for imaging, a nurse noticed Percy still perched on the stretcher. "There's a bird here," she announced, somewhat unnecessarily. Dr. Malik barely paused. "The bird stays," she decided after Eliza quickly explained the situation. "Put it in the waiting area with someone to watch it. The owner will want to know it's safe." While Olivia was rushed into treatment, Percy was gently transferred to a quiet corner of the waiting room. A young volunteer named Mia was assigned to watch him, a task she accepted with obvious delight. "You're a hero, you know that," she told the parrot, offering him water in a small cup. Not many birds, or people for that matter, would know what to do in that situation. Percy remained uncharacteristically quiet, his usual chatter replaced by watchful waiting. His head would turn toward the treatment area doors whenever they opened, obviously hoping to see Olivia. Behind those doors, a whirlwind of activity surrounded Olivia. The CT scan confirmed an ischemic stroke. A blood clot was blocking blood flow to a portion of her brain. Because of Percy's quick action and the paramedics' rapid response, Olivia was a candidate for TPA, a powerful drug that could dissolve the clot and restore blood flow. "We have consent for TPA," Dr. Malik announced, referencing the emergency contact, Olivia's brother, who had given approval over the phone. "Let S move." In the waiting area, Mia observed Percy with growing fascination. The parrot wasn't a T behaving like any bird she'd encountered before. He seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, remaining focused and alert, despite the chaotic environment of the emergency department. "Your owner is in good hands," she assured him, feeling only slightly foolish for having a conversation with a bird. "Dr. Malik is the best neurologist in the state." Percy turned his intelligent gaze toward her. "Olivia, good person. Olivia, love Percy." Mia blinked in surprise. "I am sure she does, and you obviously love her too." The hours ticked by slowly. Percy accepted small sips of water and bits of fruit that Mia brought from the cafeteria, but he refused to leave his perch on the back of the waiting room chair. His vigilance never wavered. Late in the afternoon, Dr. Malik finally emerged from the treatment area, looking tired but satisfied. She approached the waiting area where Olivia's brother had now joined Mia and Percy. The TPA treatment was successful, she announced, her voice carrying the measured tone of someone who had delivered both good and bad news many times. We were able to dissolve the clot before it caused permanent damage. Your sister is stabilized and responding well. Relief washed over Jacob's face. Can I see her? She is being transferred to the ICU for monitoring, Dr. Malik explained. You can visit briefly once she has settled. She paused, her gaze shifting to Percy. I've been told we have an unusual hero to thank for the timely intervention. Jacob nodded, glancing at the Parrot with newfound respect. The dispatcher played me the 911 call. I still can't believe it. Dr. Malik smiled slightly. In my years of practice, I've learned not to underestimate the bonds between people and animals. Sometimes they see things we miss. She hesitated, then added, It might help Olivia's recovery to have her pet nearby. I'll speak with the ICU staff about making an exception. As Dr. Malik walked away, Jacob approached Percy cautiously. The Parrot had belonged to his sister for years, but he'd never paid much attention to the bird, viewing it as just another of Olivia's eccentricities. Thank you, he said simply. You saved my sister's life. Percy cocked his head, his bright eyes fixed on Jacob. Oh, family important. Percy family. Jacob felt something shift in his perspective. This wasn't just a pet. This was a being capable of love, loyalty, and remarkable intelligence, and somehow he had recognized a life-threatening emergency and taken action while Jacob himself had been unreachable in a business meeting across town. Later that evening, against all hospital protocols but with Dr. Malik's unusual authorization, Percy was allowed a brief visit to Olivia's ICU room. The Parrot remained perfectly behaved, perching quietly on Jacob's arm as they approached the bed where Olivia lay, connected to monitors and IVs. Her eyes fluttered open at their approach, still clouded with medication, but showing recognition. When she saw Percy, a small smile crossed her face. My hero, she whispered, her voice weak but clear. Percy leaned forward slightly, his posture conveying what seemed impossibly like understanding. Percy, love Olivia. Percy, stay. For the medical staff watching this unusual interaction, it was a powerful reminder of why they had chosen their professions. To preserve not just life, but the bonds that make life meaningful. What no one in that room could have guessed was that Percy's extraordinary intervention would lead to discoveries that went far beyond a medical emergency. The Parrot's actions had set in motion a chain of events that would uncover long-buried secrets and change many lives forever. As Jacob left the hospital that night, with Percy safely settled in a carrier beside him, he received a strange message on his phone, a text from an unknown number that simply read, "The bird knows more than you think. Be careful who you trust." Jacob stared at the cryptic message, then at Percy, who gazed back with those intelligent, unreadable eyes. What had begun as a medical emergency was about to evolve into something far more complex and mysterious than anyone could have imagined. Jacob's apartment felt unnaturally quiet as he set Percy's cage near the window. The events of the day had left him exhausted yet unable to relax, his mind circling back to that strange text message. He glanced at his phone again, rereading the cryptic words. "The bird knows more than you think. Be careful who you trust." "Oh, what is that supposed to mean?" he murmured, looking at Percy, who had settled on his perch, feathers slightly ruffled from the stress of the day. Percy tilted his head, regarding Jacob with those intelligent eyes that seemed to hold secrets. The Parrot had been unnaturally quiet since leaving the hospital, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. Jacob ran his fingers through his hair, trying to make sense of it all. He barely knew his sister's Parrot. He'd always been too busy with his corporate law practice to pay much attention during his infrequent visits. But now, he found himself studying the bird with new interest. What had the message meant? What could Percy possibly know? "I'm overthinking this," he told himself. Probably just someone's idea of a sick joke. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Percy than met the eye. After all, the bird had somehow recognized the symptoms of a stroke and called emergency services with remarkable precision. That went beyond ordinary animal intelligence. The next morning, Jacob woke to the sound of Percy mimicking a phone ring. Disoriented, he fumbled for his actual phone on the nightstand. "Hello?" he answered groggily. "Mr. Turner, this is Dr. Malik from Cedar Heights Medical Center. I am calling about your sister." Jacob sat up immediately, fully alert. "So is she all right?" "Yes, she was stable and showing good signs of recovery. Actually, that's why I am calling. She has been asking for her Parrot." There was a hint of amusement in the doctor's professional tone. Apparently they quite bonded. "I can bring him in today," Jacob offered, watching as Percy hopped along the edge of his cage, clearly listening to the conversation. "That would be wonderful. We have arranged for her to be moved to a private room where we can accommodate her unusual companion. I must say this is highly irregular, but given the circumstances and the potential benefits to her recovery, we were making an exception." After hanging up, Jacob approached Percy's cage. "Looks like you were going back to the hospital, buddy. Olivia wants to see you." Percy bobbed his head enthusiastically. "Olivia. See Olivia. Go now." The bird's apparent understanding still unnerved Jacob somewhat, but he tried to hide his discomfort as he prepared for the day. As he was gathering his keys and Percy's carrier, his phone chimed with a text notification. Unknown. Number. Watch what the bird reacts to at the hospital. Not everyone is who they appear to be. Jacob froze, staring at the message. This was getting bizarre. Who was sending these warnings, and why? He considered contacting the police, but quickly dismissed the idea. What would he say? That he was receiving cryptic texts about his sister's Parrot. They'd think he was wasting their time. Instead, he took a photo of the message and set Percy's carrier on the kitchen counter while he finished his coffee. The Parrot was unusually alert, watching Jacob's every move. "What's going on, Percy?" Jacob asked, feeling slightly foolish for addressing the bird directly. "Who is sending these messages about you?" To his surprise, Percy tilted his head and responded, Catherine Danger." Jacob's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. "What did you say? Who is Catherine?" But Percy merely repeated, "Olivia. See Olivia. Go now," refusing to elaborate further. The drive to Cedar Heights Medical Center was tense, with Jacob's mind racing through possibilities. Who was Catherine? The name wasn't familiar to him. Olivia had never mentioned anyone by that name, at least not that he could recall. And what danger could this person possibly be in? At the hospital, Jacob had expected some resistance about bringing a Parrot into the building, but word of Percy's heroic actions had apparently spread. The receptionist merely smiled and directed them to Olivia's new room on the 3rd floor, where she had been moved from the ICU. "We've had to bend quite a few rules for your feathered friend," she explained, but Dr. Malik was insistent. Said something about the therapeutic benefits of animal companionship during recovery. Jacob nodded his thanks, carrying Percy's travel cage toward the elevator. In the reflection of the polished metal doors, he noticed a woman watching them intently from across the lobby. When he turned to look directly, she quickly averted her gaze and pretended to be engrossed in a magazine. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place her. As they entered the elevator, Percy suddenly became agitated, flapping his wings and making small distressed sounds. "What is wrong?" Jacob asked, concerned by the bird's behavior. Percy's eyes were fixed on something or someone outside the elevator. Jacob looked back just as the doors closed and caught a glimpse of the same woman, now approaching rapidly with a determined expression. "Bad person," Percy squawked urgently. "Bad person. Danger." The elevator doors closed completely, cutting off Jacob's view of the woman. His heart raced as the cabin began to ascend. Percy's warning combined with the strange texts had him thoroughly unsettled now. Was the woman following them? And if so, why? When they reached the 3rd floor, Jacob hesitated before stepping out, half expecting to find the mysterious woman waiting. The corridor was empty except for a nurse checking charts at the station. "Can I help you find someone?" she asked, noticing his uncertain expression. "I am here to see Olivia Turner," Jacob replied, trying to sound casual despite his inner turmoil. "Room 312. "Right down the hall on the left," the nurse directed with a smile. "She has been doing remarkably well this morning. Dr. Malik thinks she might be able to go home in a few days with proper support." Jacob thanked her and continued down the corridor, feeling slightly reassured by the ordinary interaction. Perhaps he was being paranoid, letting the mysterious texts get to him. After all, the woman in the lobby could have been anyone: a visitor, hospital staff, someone completely unrelated to their situation. He found room 312 and knocked softly before entering. Olivia was sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. Her face lit up when she saw them. "Percy!" she exclaimed, her voice stronger than it had been the previous day. She reached out as Jacob set the carrier on the bedside table and opened the door. Percy immediately hopped out and moved carefully to Olivia's outstretched hand, gently rubbing his head against her fingers in a display of affection that Jacob found unexpectedly moving. "You saved my life, my clever boy," Olivia murmured, stroking Percy's feathers tenderly. "How did you know what to do?" Percy settled comfortably on the edge of the bed. "Help, Olivia. Percy, help." Jacob pulled up a chair, watching their interaction with newfound appreciation. "The doctors say you were doing well," he told his sister. "They think you might be able to go home soon." Olivia nodded, though her expression clouded slightly. "I'll need some help for a while. The stroke affected my left side. It is better already, but I'll need physical therapy." "You can stay with me," Jacob offered immediately. "I can work from home a few days a week, and we can arrange for a home health aide when I am at the office." "Thank you," Olivia said, clearly touched by the offer. "I was worried about that and about Percy. My apartment isn't exactly accessible at the moment." As they discussed logistics, a nurse entered to check Olivia's vitals. Percy's reaction was immediate and startling. He puffed up his feathers and emitted a low warning sound. "Bad nurse," he squawked. "Not real. Bad nurse." Jacob stared at the bird, then at the nurse who had frozen in the doorway, her expression shifting from professional friendliness to something harder to read. "I'm sorry," Jacob apologized, embarrassed. "He has been through a lot in the past couple of days." The nurse smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "No problem. Animals can be sensitive to strangers." She approached the bed with a blood pressure cuff. "This will just take a moment, Ms. Turner." Jacob watched carefully as she took Olivia's vitals, noting how Percy remained agitated, his eyes never leaving the nurse's hands. Was this what the text had meant about watching the bird's reactions? But why would Percy be upset about a nurse? When she finished and left the room, Jacob turned to Olivia. "Has that nurse been taking care of you since you arrived?" Olivia shook her head, looking puzzled. "No, I don't think I've seen her before. But I've been attended by so many people, it is hard to keep track." Jacob felt a chill run down his spine. He remembered the text. Not everyone is who they appear to be. Could the nurse be an imposter? But that seemed absurd. This was a secure hospital with protocols and ID checks. Percy had calmed down after the nurse's departure, but he remained watchful, occasionally glancing toward the door as if expecting trouble. "To Olivia," Jacob began cautiously. "Do you know anyone named Catherine?" His sister's brow furrowed in concentration. "Catherine? I don't think so. Why do you ask?" Before Jacob could explain, Percy suddenly became alert again, his head swiveling toward the door seconds before it opened. Dr. Malik entered, carrying Olivia's chart. "Good morning," she greeted them warmly. "How are we feeling today?" To Jacob's relief, Percy showed no signs of distress at the doctor's presence. If anything, he seemed to relax slightly. "Much better," Olivia replied. "When can I go home?" Dr. Malik consulted the chart. "Your progress is excellent. If things continue this way, possibly in 2 or 3 days, though you will need substantial support during your recovery." She glanced at Jacob. "I understand you will be staying with your brother?" Jacob nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Should he mention the strange nurse? It felt ridiculous to raise an alarm based on a Parrot's reaction, yet Percy's behavior had been specific and deliberate. And after what the bird had done for Olivia, Jacob was inclined to trust his instincts. "Dr. Malik," he said finally, "a nurse just came in to check my sister's vitals, but Olivia doesn't recognize her from her previous care. Is there a way to verify who S assigned to this room?" The doctor looked surprised. "Of course, what did she look like?" Jacob described the woman, including the badge he glimpsed that read L. Wilson. Dr. Malik frowned. "That is strange. There is no L. Wilson on our nursing staff that I am aware of. Let me check with the charge nurse." She stepped out of the room, leaving Jacob and Olivia exchanging worried glances. "You don't think—" Olivia began. "I don't know what to think," Jacob admitted, but Percy was very upset by her presence, and after what happened yesterday, Percy bobbed his head vigorously. "Bad person, Catherine Danger." Olivia stared at her parrot. "There it is again. Who's Catherine?" Before they could discuss it further, Dr. Malik returned, her expression grave. "I've spoken with the nursing supervisor. There is no L. Wilson authorized to work on this floor, or anywhere in the hospital for that matter. Security has been notified." Jacob felt his stomach tighten. So someone unauthorized was in here pretending to be a nurse. "It appears so," Dr. Malik confirmed. "This is a serious breach of protocol. I am having your sister moved to another room immediately, and we'll post security outside her door until we understand what is happening." As the doctor left to make arrangements, Olivia gripped Jacob's hand, her face pale with fear. "What is going on, Jake? Who would pretend to be a nurse to get access to me?" Jacob shook his head, equally bewildered. "I don't know, but we were going to find out." He hesitated, then decided to tell her about the text messages. "Someone has been sending me warnings about Percy, saying he knows more than we think and that we should watch who we trust." Olivia's eyes widened. "That's unsettling. But why would anyone care about Percy?" "Maybe because of what he did. Calling 911 attracted a lot of attention." Percy, who had been listening to their conversation with apparent interest, suddenly spoke again. "File cabinet, red file, Catherine pictures." Both siblings stared at the parrot in astonishment. "What red file?" Olivia asked. "Percy, what are you talking about?" But the bird just repeated, "Red file, Catherine pictures," refusing to elaborate further. Jacob felt like he was falling down a rabbit hole. First the mysterious texts, then the fake nurse, and now Percy was talking about files and pictures. None of it made sense. "Olivia," he said slowly, "does Percy have access to your home office? Could he have seen documents on your desk?" Olivia nodded, looking thoughtful. "My office door is usually open, and Percy has free range of the apartment when I am home. He is curious about everything I do." "And do you have a red file with someone's pictures in it?" She frowned, concentrating. "Not that I can remember, but my work involves reviewing a lot of documentation. It is possible there was something—" Olivia had worked as a forensic accountant for years, often handling sensitive financial investigations for both corporate and government clients. Her job involved sifting through mountains of paperwork, looking for discrepancies and evidence of fraud. "What were you working on before this happened?" Jacob asked, gesturing vaguely toward the hospital room. "I've been examining the financial records for Westridge Pharmaceuticals," Olivia replied. "There were irregularities in their research funding allocations, money supposedly going to clinical trials that couldn't be properly accounted for." Jacob felt a chill run down his spine. Pharmaceuticals, clinical trials. Somehow those elements seemed significant, though he could not yet see how they connected to their current situation. "Do you remember anything unusual about the case? Anything that might have stood out?" Olivia closed her eyes, concentrating. "There was something about a terminated research project. The company claimed they shut it down due to lack of promising results, but they continued to funnel money into an account associated with it." That she opened her eyes, looking troubled. The lead researcher's name was Dr. Lambert, Richard Lambert. Percy suddenly became agitated again, flapping his wings. "Lambert bad. Lambert hurt Catherine." Jacob and Olivia exchanged stunned looks. "How could Percy know that name?" Jacob whispered. Olivia shook her head, clearly baffled. "I must have mentioned it at home while reviewing the files. Percy picks up everything he hears." but I don't recall any Catherine connected to the case. Before they could discuss it further, Dr. Malik returned with 2 security officers and a transport team. "We are moving you to a secure room on the 5th floor," she explained. "The hospital is reviewing security footage to identify the woman who was in here earlier. In the meantime, these officers will ensure no unauthorized personnel enter your new room." As they prepared to transfer Olivia, Jacob carefully returned Percy to his carrier. The Parrot went willingly, but continued to watch the proceedings with unusual intensity. "I need to get some things from your apartment," Jacob told his sister once she was settled in the new room. "Clothes, toiletries, and maybe I should check your office for this red file Percy mentioned." Olivia nodded, still looking shaken by the Day S events. "The spare key is in my purse. Be careful, Jake. If someone was willing to impersonate a nurse to get to me—" "I'll be fine," he assured her, though he wasn't feeling nearly as confident as he sounded. "The security officers will stay with you, and I'll be back before dinner." As Jacob prepared to leave with Percy, one of the security officers, a tall man with sharp eyes named Rodriguez, pulled him aside. "Sir, the hospital security team found something on the cameras," he said in a low voice. "The woman who posed as a nurse was captured entering the building through a service entrance. She used an ID card to access it, which means either she stole credentials or she has an accomplice inside the hospital." Jacob felt his concern deepen. "Have you identified her?" "Not yet. She kept her face angled away from most cameras, but we've alerted local police, and they resending someone to take statements." With this troubling information in mind, Jacob left the hospital, Percy's carrier secure in his grip. The afternoon sun was beginning to wane as they reached his car in the parking garage. Just as he was unlocking the door, he noticed a piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. Cautiously, he picked it up and unfolded it. Inside was a handwritten message. "The red file is not at her apartment anymore. They already took it. What you need is at 1460 Harborview Drive, Unit 7B. Come alone if you want answers about Catherine." Jacob stared at the note, his heart pounding. He glanced around the parking garage, but saw no one watching. How had the note writer known about the red file? Had they been listening somehow, and who was they? "What do you think, Percy?" he murmured, showing the note to the Parrot through the carrier bars. "Is this a trap?" Percy studied the paper, then looked up at Jacob with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. "Catherine needs help. Trap dangerous. Call police." It was the most coherent sentence Jacob had heard from the bird yet, and it sent shivers down his spine. Percy wasn't just repeating phrases. He was forming opinions, making judgments. Jacob folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. The address wasn't too far from Olivia's apartment building. He could check her place first, then decide whether to investigate the mysterious location. The drive to Olivia's apartment was tense, with Jacob constantly checking his rearview mirror for signs of being followed. Percy remained unusually quiet in his carrier, occasionally making soft, concerned sounds. Olivia's apartment was in an upscale building with good security. A doorman nodded in recognition as Jacob entered, having seen him visit his sister many times before. "Good afternoon, Mr. Turner," the man greeted him. "I heard about Miss Turner. Please send her our best wishes for a speedy recovery." "Thank you, George. I will," Jacob replied, wondering briefly if he should mention the strange events, then deciding against it. No need to spread alarm until he understood what was happening. Once inside Olivia's apartment, Jacob released Percy from his carrier. The Parrot immediately flew through the space, as if conducting his own inspection. "Show office," Percy demanded, hovering near a hallway. "Red file." Jacob followed the bird to Olivia's home office, a well-organized space with a desk, filing cabinets, and bookshelves. Everything looked ordinary at first glance, but as he moved further into the room, he noticed subtle signs of disturbance. The drawer of one filing cabinet was fully closed, and there were scuff marks on the hardwood floor near the desk. "Someone has been here," he murmured, feeling a chill run down his spine. Percy landed on the partially open drawer, pulling at it with his beak. "Look here, look here." Jacob carefully opened the drawer, half expecting it to be empty based on the note S warning. Instead, he found the files appeared intact, but something felt off. He began examining them more closely, noticing that while they were neatly labeled, The contents didn't always match the labels. Someone had rearranged them, perhaps looking for something specific. "Red file gone," Percy confirmed, hopping from the drawer to the desk. "Picture hidden." "What picture, Percy? Where?" The Parrot flew to a framed photograph on the wall, a landscape of mountains that Olivia had taken during a vacation. "Behind, look behind." Feeling increasingly like he stepped into a thriller movie, Jacob carefully removed the frame from the wall. Sure enough, taped to the back of the photograph was a small USB drive. "How did you know about this?" he asked Percy, who merely tilted his head in response. Jacob pocketed the drive, then continued searching the apartment for anything unusual. In Olivia's bedroom, he packed a bag with clothes and toiletries for her hospital stay. As he was zipping it closed, his phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Mr. Turner." The voice was female, deliberately disguised with some kind of electronic distortion. "I see you found my note." Jacob's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" "A friend of Catherine S., and potentially yours, if you threaten re-smart. Did you find what was hidden behind the picture?" Jacob felt his blood run cold. Whoever this was, they were watching him. Or had the apartment bugged? He glanced around, trying to spot any surveillance devices. "I don't know what you've been talking about," he lied, moving toward the door with Percy's carrier. "I'm just here to get some things for my sister." "Don, to play games," the voice snapped. "Your sister was getting too close. The stroke was no accident." The implication hit Jacob like a physical blow. "Are you saying someone deliberately caused Olivia's stroke? That S, impossible." "Is it?" Westridge Pharmaceuticals has been developing a compound that can induce stroke-like symptoms when administered correctly. It's undetectable in standard toxicology screens unless you know exactly what to look for. Your sister found evidence of unauthorized human testing. Jacob felt sick. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Catherine Winters was one of their test subjects, and now she's missing. Your sister, R.S. Parrot, witnessed a conversation that could help us find her. That is why they want him." "Who is they? And how could Percy possibly?" "The USB drive contains encrypted files about Project Silence, Westridge's classified program. Take it to 1460 Harborview Drive. Come alone. I'll explain everything." The call disconnected, leaving Jacob standing in Olivia's living room, the USB drive feeling like it was burning a hole in his pocket. Percy had flown to his shoulder, unusually quiet, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. "What have you seen, Percy?" Jacob whispered. "What do you know about all this?" The Parrot nuzzled against his cheek, a gesture that seemed almost comforting. "Help Catherine, trust Mia, danger coming." Jacob froze. "Mia? Who is Mia?" But Percy offered no further explanation, leaving Jacob with more questions than answers as they prepared to leave the apartment. Someone had deliberately harmed his sister. Someone wanted Percy. And somewhere a woman named Catherine was in danger, or worse. As Jacob locked Olivia's apartment door behind them, he made a decision. He would return to the hospital first, ensure his sister's security was enhanced, and then perhaps he would investigate the mysterious address. But one thing was certain: he wouldn't be going alone, despite the caller's instructions. He would bring Percy, whose remarkable intelligence and perception had already proven invaluable. What Jacob couldn't have known was that events were already in motion that would make his cautious plans irrelevant. The conspiracy Percy had accidentally uncovered was far larger and more dangerous than either of them realized, and the players involved would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. As they drove away from Olivia's building, a dark sedan pulled out several cars behind them, following at a discreet distance. Inside, a woman spoke quietly into a phone. He found the drive, proceeding as planned. The trap was set, and Jacob was driving straight into it with Percy, the unexpected witness who had started it all, right beside him. Jacob's instincts told him he was being followed. Rather than heading directly to the hospital or the mysterious address, he made a sudden decision, pulling into the parking lot of a busy shopping center. "Change of plans, Percy," he murmured to the Parrot. "We need backup." He dialed Detective Morgan Reed, an old college friend who now worked in the Major Crimes Division. After quickly explaining the situation, Morgan agreed to meet him at a small cafe in the shopping centre. "Don't go to that address alone," Morgan warned. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, and Jacob, bring the bird." The cafe was crowded enough to provide anonymity, but quiet enough for conversation. Morgan arrived promptly, her sharp eyes taking in the unusual sight of Jacob, with Percy perched discreetly on his shoulder. "You weren't kidding about the parrot," she said, sliding into the booth opposite him. "This has to be the strangest case I've heard in years." Jacob handed her the USB drive and the note he found on his car. "I think my sister stumbled onto something big at Westridge Pharmaceuticals, something involving unauthorized drug testing." Morgan examined the items carefully. "I've heard whispers about Westridge. Nothing concrete, but their name has come up in some pharmaceutical theft investigations." She looked thoughtfully at Percy. "And you were saying this bird has been providing clues?" As if on cue, Percy bobbed his head. "Help Catherine, Lambert bad." Morgan's eyebrows shot up. Impressive vocabulary. She pulled out her laptop. "Let us see what S on this drive." The files were encrypted, but one document had been left accessible. A scanned photo of a woman with a brief note attached. "Subject CW shows promising response to compound RX7. Memory modification partially successful." "Tire Catherine Winters," Jacob breathed, recognizing the name from the mysterious call. Morgan nodded grimly. "I know this woman. Catherine Winters disappeared 3 weeks ago. Her case landed on my desk because she was last seen leaving Westridge Laboratories, where she participated in what was supposedly a sleep study." Percy became agitated, flapping his wings. "Catherine at Olivia East. Catherine scared." Jacob and Morgan exchanged looks. "So my sister must have interviewed her as part of the financial investigation," Jacob reasoned. "But how would Percy know about their meeting unless—" "Unless he witnessed it," Morgan finished. "Parrots can live for decades. What if this bird saw something critical during their conversation?" Morgan made a quick call to her department, requesting an immediate protection detail for Olivia at the hospital and a forensic team to examine her apartment. Then she entered the address from the note into her database. 1460 Harborview Drive, Unit 7B belongs to a woman named Mia Chen, she reported. Former research assistant at Westridge, who resigned about 6 months ago, citing ethical concerns. "Mia!" Percy exclaimed. "Trust Mia." "That is the name Percy mentioned earlier," Jacob confirmed. "He said to trust her." Morgan made another call, arranging for a tactical team to secure the location. "You're not walking into a potential trap without backup," she insisted. When they arrived at Harborview Drive, police had already established a perimeter around the building. Morgan's phone buzzed with an update. "Mia Chen is inside," she reported, "and she's not alone. There's another woman with her who matches Catherine Winters' description." With police support, they approached the apartment. Mia Chen opened the door before they could knock. A slender woman with intelligent eyes that widened at the sight of Percy. "You brought him," she said with visible relief. "Come in quickly." Inside, they found Catherine Winters sitting on the couch, looking exhausted but very much alive. She gasped when she saw Percy. "The talking bird," she exclaimed. "You found him." Over the next hour, the full story emerged. Catherine had been recruited for what she believed was a routine sleep study at Westridge Pharmaceuticals. Instead, she became an unwitting test subject for Project Silence, a classified program developing memory-altering compounds with potential military applications. They could selectively erase specific memories, Mia explained. She had been a researcher on the project until she discovered they were testing on subjects without proper consent. Or implant false ones. The pharmaceutical applications were just a cover for the real purpose. Catherine nodded. "I started having gaps in my memory, but also vivid recollections of events that never happened. When I questioned the researchers, they told me it was a common side effect that would fade. But then I overheard Dr. Lambert discussing my excellent response to the treatment. She had managed to steal partial records of her case and sought help from Olivia Turner, whose investigation into Westridge's finances had become known among whistleblowers. I met with her at her apartment," Catherine continued. I showed her everything I had. That Parrot was there watching us the whole time. She gestured toward Percy, who was listening intently. When Lambert's men came looking for me, I fled. I later heard Ms. Turner had suffered a stroke, and I feared they had silenced her too. They tried, Jacob said grimly, but they didn't count on Percy. Mia picked up the thread. I've been hiding Catherine while gathering evidence. When we heard about the Parrot who called 911, we recognized him from Catherine's description. We knew he might have heard critical information during their meeting. But why target Percy? Morgan asked. Because of what Catherine told Olivia while he was present, Mia explained. Names, dates, locations of other test subjects, information we need to expose the entire operation and help the victims. Percy suddenly spoke up. Lambert injection, Tuesday meeting, Project Move North. Catherine gasped. Yes, that is exactly what I told Olivia. Doctor, Lambert was planning to relocate the project to a northern facility after administering one final round of injections to the test subjects this Tuesday. Today is Monday, Morgan noted, checking her watch. We don't have much time. She immediately contacted her department, arranging for search warrants and coordinating with the FDA and FBI. The USB drive contained enough evidence to justify immediate action against Westridge Pharmaceuticals. That evening, as law enforcement prepared their coordinated raid, Jacob returned to the hospital with Percy. He found Olivia awake and alert, with 2 police officers stationed outside her door. You were right, he told her, setting Percy's carrier on the bedside table. Your investigation uncovered something huge. He explained everything they had learned, watching as his sister's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. I remember now, she said slowly. Catherine came to me with documents showing financial transfers to test subjects who didn't exist. When I dug deeper, I found evidence of falsified clinical trial data. The day before my stroke, I compiled everything into a red file and was preparing to contact the authorities. She glanced at Percy with newfound respect. And all this time, he remembered what Catherine had told me, information I couldn't recall after the stroke. Percy preened under the attention. Help Olivia. Help Catherine. Percy smart. Yes, you are, Olivia agreed, gently stroking his feathers, smarter than any of us realized. The next morning brought news of a successful raid on Westridge Laboratories. Dr. Richard Lambert and several executives were arrested, and dozens of files on unwitting test subjects were recovered. Project Silence was shut down, its victims identified for proper medical follow-up and compensation. For Jacob, the most significant outcome was his sister's accelerated recovery. Dr. Malik confirmed what they had suspected. Olivia had been deliberately exposed to a compound designed to cause temporary stroke-like symptoms. The good news is that the effects are reversible, she explained during a follow-up examination. Now that we know what we were dealing with, we can administer the appropriate counteragent. Your recovery should progress much faster. About 2 weeks later, Olivia was well enough to return home. Not to her apartment, but to Jacob's house, where he had set up a comfortable guest room for her extended stay. Percy, of course, came with her, his cage positioned near a sunny window with a view of the garden. Catherine Winters also made a full recovery. With Mia Chen's help, she established a support group for other victims of Project Silence, helping them navigate the complicated process of recovering memories and rebuilding their lives. The case against Westridge Pharmaceuticals grew as more evidence emerged. The company's stock plummeted, and several board members faced criminal charges for their knowledge of and participation in the illegal research. One quiet evening, as Olivia was completing her physical therapy exercises in the living room, Percy flew to her shoulder and nuzzled her cheek affectionately. Percy, save Olivia, he said, with what sounded remarkably like pride. Percy family. Olivia smiled, reaching up to stroke his feathers. Yes, you are family. The best kind. The kind that is there when it matters most. Jacob, watching from the doorway, felt a profound sense of gratitude. What had begun as a medical emergency had exposed a dangerous conspiracy and strengthened bonds he hadn't even realized needed strengthening. His relationship with his sister had deepened through their shared ordeal, and he gained a new appreciation for the remarkable intelligence and loyalty of the Parrot who had saved her life. Detective Morgan Reed stopped by regularly, often bringing updates on the Westridge case. The evidence Percy had helped uncover had led to investigations of similar operations at other pharmaceutical companies, potentially saving countless lives. "Your Parrot should get a badge," she joked during one visit. "He is a better detective than half my department." Percy, perched nearby, tilted his head as if considering the idea. "Percy, good bird, help people." "The best bird," Olivia agreed, exchanging a smile with Jacob. "A hero with feathers." As spring turned to summer, life settled into a new normal. Olivia recovered enough to return to work, though she chose a less stressful position consulting for companies implementing more ethical research practices. Catherine and Mia became frequent visitors, their shared experience creating a bond that evolved into genuine friendship. And Percy. He continued his watchful guardianship, his vocabulary now expanded to include phrases like "feeling better" and "take medicine," which he would use to remind Olivia of her recovery routine. The Parrot, who had once been merely a beloved pet, had revealed himself to be so much more, a protector, a witness, and a vital link in a chain of events that had brought justice to many. 1 year after the stroke, they gathered in Jacob's backyard for a celebration of Olivia's full recovery. As the evening sun cast a golden glow over the gathering, Percy flew to the center of the table and looked around at the assembled faces: Jacob, Olivia, Morgan, Catherine, Mia, and Dr. Malik, who had become part of their extended family. "Family safe now," Percy announced with conviction. "Percy watch, Percy love." In that moment, surrounded by the people whose lives had been changed by one Parrot's remarkable intervention, Jacob understood that the true miracle wasn't it just that Percy had saved Olivia's life by calling 911. It was that he had recognized something was wrong in the first place, that he had cared enough to act, to persist until help came. Sometimes, Jacob reflected, the most extraordinary heroes were the ones you least expected, and sometimes the most powerful voice was the one that spoke up when others couldn't tea or wouldn't tea. As if reading his thoughts, Percy flew to his shoulder and softly said, "Love important, family important." Simple words, perhaps, but in them lay the profound truth they had all discovered through their ordeal, that love, loyalty, and the courage to speak up could overcome even the darkest of intentions, and that heroes, whether human or feathered, were defined not by their appearance, but by their actions when it mattered most. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.